Lucy and Joshua are both working from the same office, and you could almost say that they're mirroring each other with their actions. Soon, Lucy comes on the radio and talks about how the publishing company they're working at was actually two separate types of publishing companies not too long ago. While they might be working together, they're definitely still at war. These two are definitely from opposing companies. One publisher believed in literature as art, while the other believed in pumping out ghost-written autobiographies. Lucy has a number of reasons for why she hates Josh. For one, she's never seen him smile. He's a control freak, and he corrects every little thing that she does. Most importantly, after the merger, he waltzed in and fired all of Lucy's friends. I'd say that they're definitely nemesis if there ever were. We've barely started the movie and you can already sense the petty bullcrap that goes on between the two of them. We're immediately thrown into a meeting, and the only people that are keeping it from going on are Lucy and Josh as they bicker back and forth. Just exclude them from the activities. And who had the great idea to put them in the same office and facing each other? To top that off, we find out that the meeting is to announce that a new position will be opening for a managing director that will oversee both companies and report directly to the higher-ups. They have until the new year to prepare a presentation, and that leaves them with just over a month to get ready. Naturally, Lucy and Josh are both eyeing that position, and the only person they see that's in their way there is the other. After some more back and forth banter, they finally make a pact that whoever doesn't get the job will quit. Once they get to their office, there's a hint that people think that they're actually flirting with each other. But that's immediately shot down. Or is it? Ah! She had said she had never seen him smile. Does this creepy grin count? That's the grin of a workplace stalker, but unluckily for him, he literally sits face to face with her. There's no escaping it. Soon, Josh's boss, Bexley, arrives, and Lucy tries to sweet-talk him about the new book they've printed. Once he finally leaves, she talks about how much of a pain he is, and Josh seems to agree to some extent. He makes fun of the way Lucy couldn't think of anything else to comment on other than the cover, and he describes it as though a horny 5th grader designed it. For some reason, I knew exactly what kind of cover it looked like based off of how he described it. Look, we all know how these rom-coms go. These two can't stand each other, they compete against each other, they end up having to find some common ground, and by the end, they at least have feelings for each other. So let's not focus on that this time. The banter between the two of them is priceless, and if anything's fresh in this movie, it's definitely the dialogue.
Mommy and Daddy fight sometimes.
We have discussions.
See what I mean? Fresh dialogue is one way to describe it. Hopefully the mommy and daddy thing doesn't stick though. I don't think this is that kind of movie. On Lucy's commute home, things continue to get weird. Oh yeah, that does it for me. All it takes is a good turkey. All jokes aside, that was a plump bird though. Once Lucy gets home, she calls her mother to wish her a happy Thanksgiving, but she tells her mom that she has to go. She lies by saying it's to go hang out with friends, when in reality she's just writing Smurf fanfiction in her dark dining room. When she lies down to sleep, she ends up dreaming about Josh touching her, and the dream gets her so worked up that she gets mad about dreaming about Josh. When she goes to work the next day, she's prepared to retaliate with psychological warfare. She's all dressed up, but that can't make up for her clumsiness as she trips into the office. I mean, her clumsiness is legendary. She trips into the office, loses her menstrual cup, and hits her head on her desk. To top it off, Josh immediately guesses that she had a sex dream about him. That's confidence for sure. She tries her best to get inside his head, but Josh seems to be a little ahead of her. I can't tell if this is how he is all the time, or if this is just him putting on a front. Josh calls her bluff on having a hot date that night, so Lucy heads to meet Dan the designer to talk him into going out that night. After a long workday, Lucy and Josh finish up their final projects, and she decides to try and spy through Josh's things. She gets nothing useful, and the two of them leave to go to the club for her big date. As they continue their normal banter in the elevator, Josh stops the elevator to ask her if she really hates him. That was a rhetorical question, right? Obviously, she lunges in to kiss him and he gets a little handsy. Obviously. At least they didn't wait the entire movie to get a little confirmation. Lucy still goes on her date afterwards, and that goes about as well as you'd think, too.
A great wit. I mean...
Smooth move, Danny. If she didn't just get hot and heavy with Josh in the elevator, I'd say that might have actually worked. She's so worked up that when she runs into Josh at the door, she tells him that he won the get in your head game. He tries to tell her that he just forgot her purse in the car, but she just wants him gone. When she goes back to Danny, he asks her if there's anything between her and Josh, but she confirms that he and her are on an actual date. After a fantastic night, Things seem to be going well for the two of them. We see that they actually grow pretty close pretty quickly, and she couldn't be happier. Back at work, Josh tries to apologize, and he explains that he wants them to lay down their weapons. He asks how their date went, and they try to continue their day as normal colleagues. Yeah, that was never gonna happen. The bosses show up a little later to tell them that they went with Josh's idea for a team building exercise, and Lucy pulls out the big guns again.
You couldn't let me have that, could you?
Obviously, this is all in her mind, but the intention's clear. The hating game is back on. The company heads out for a team building day of paintball, and the difference between Lucy and Josh could not be clearer. As they head out to play some paintball, Lucy and Josh are on the same team, but that peace will only last so long. After the two of them get shot, Josh notices that she's running a fever, and she promptly throws up on him. Josh drives her home and helps to take care of her. Josh even gets his brother, who's a doctor, to come and check on her, and Lucy takes the opportunity to find out some embarrassing information about Josh. After the brothers leave to let Lucy get some rest, she overhears them talking about showing up for the brothers' wedding. But there seems to be some sort of drama surrounding it. This is the obligatory moment where Lucy realizes that Josh only acts the way he does because of a defense mechanism. She also realizes that it's okay to open up to each other, as is tradition. The next morning, Lucy comes out to see that Josh is still taking care of things in her apartment. And after she tells him to stop over and over, he's a little upset and leaves. Later at work, Danny gives Lucy flowers and asks how she was. And he continues to talk her ear off all the way up to her office where Josh is already working. Once they get upstairs, Danny notices a rose and drink already sitting on her desk, and he promptly shows himself out. Lucy goes to her desk, and after looking at the note, she realizes that he's the actual one that's been sending her flowers to her apartment. She heads into her boss's office, and she asks what her chances are for getting the promotion. Things look great for her, but when she goes out to see what she can do for Josh to make them even, he just tries to blow her off. Of course, her first thought is to trap him inside the supply closet and get up close and personal to get his attention, but Josh has something else in mind.
Go to dinner with Danny and kiss him.
That's cold, but he follows it up with some sound logic. He doesn't want to be messed with unless she's sure that she wants him. I can't blame him there. What's even nicer is that Lucy does just what he mentions for the same reason. She isn't too sure about any aspect of her life aside from wanting the job. Dinner goes okay for a moment, but after some selfish gift-giving on Danny's part, Lucy just goes for the kiss, and he's the only one that's amazed by it. After dinner, she heads for Josh's apartment, and he comes to find her staring at his window. She tells him that she's not dating Danny anymore, and he picks her up to kiss her. The two of them head into his apartment, and she sees that he actually lives with class. The two of them play doctor, and he tells her that he has a raging case of being horny. That's right, it's that easy, folks. Just tell them they're horny and their next stop will be bed. Next, Lucy asks Josh truth or dare. I literally thought we just jumped movies here for a minute and I was a little bit nervous. Lucy Hale actually starred in the 2018 movie Truth or Dare, and for a second I thought this might have been a sequel disguised as a love story. Once Lucy hints that they should just get it on, Josh actually puts the brakes on things pretty quickly. She's very confused on how he can turn down sex, and he mentions that it probably isn't wise to sleep with the competition. The next day, a bigwig publisher comes in and agrees to write a recommendation for his promotion. Lucy tries to call around for someone to recommend her, but she ends up asking Danny to help at this point. Soon after, Josh shows up at Lucy's doorstep to try and get her to come to his brother's wedding, and with a little persuasion, she agrees. Once they get to the hotel, there seems to be a mix-up with the rooms, and they end up staying in one room instead of two. They decide to clean up before going to the rehearsal dinner, and Lucy gets a look at the goods. Now that's the face every man wants to see. She's ready to go and they waste no time getting to it. Screw rehearsal dinner. After Josh convinces her to just stay in the hotel room with him, he asks her if there's anything she wants to know. She mentions some interesting writing she saw when she had snooped through his desk, and he tells her that it's an elaborate system for how much he wanted to kiss her at the time. She in turn tells him that she did in fact have a sex dream about him before. The next day they head to his brother's wedding, and he introduces Lucy to his mother. The two of them hit it off immediately, and they head outside for the reception where they meet his father, who's nowhere near as friendly as his mother. Once the bride walks down the aisle, there's clearly some tension in Josh's face. At the reception, Lucy ends up having a drink with the bride, where she finds out that she was actually with Josh for a whole year at one point. Well, this is sure to blow over well. Josh and Lucy take a moment to talk outside, and he explains that he was embarrassed to say anything before. He explains how his ex leaving him for his doctor brother made him feel insecure, and Lucy assures him that he has nothing to worry about at all. When they go back inside, they end up drinking with his parents, and his father lays the pressure on since Josh isn't a doctor like the rest of the family. When it comes time for the father's toast, he boasts about Josh's brother, and Josh definitely feels inadequate. Later, Lucy ends up having some alone time with Josh's mother, and she realizes that Josh actually thinks that she's the best thing to ever come into his life. What follows is an amazing show of compassion, as Lucy stands up to Josh's father about what Josh does and who he is. It's awesome, and everyone deserves a Lucy in their life. Even after they get back home, Josh finally breaks down and makes it clear that he loves her. Now, knowing how these movies go, there has to be at least one more hiccup. And the ultimate one would be if this was all part of the game to get to the promotion. That would be absolutely cold-hearted. I doubt that's it, but get ready for something. And right on cue, Lucy shows up to work to eavesdrop on a meeting Josh is having. So apparently I was spot on. His boss actually suggested doing all this to win the promotion. So what does Lucy do? She calls Danny to have coffee and listen to her problems. Danny's the king of the friend zone at this point. He was actually in there for a minute, but then he got sucked into the friend zone just like that. All of a sudden, Josh shows up and says that he was hoping to spend time with her, but she promptly turns him down. Once they get to the office again, she confronts him on what she heard, and she swears that she won't let him tear her down anymore. The two of them continue their lives as normally as possible, and over time, they simply start to ignore each other while they work towards the promotion. Josh seems to have a change of heart though. It's the week of the presentation, and Lucy takes charge of every aspect of her life. Lucy goes back to give her presentation, and afterwards, she comes back to the office to see the higher-ups giving Josh congratulations. In a turn of events, she finds out that she got the promotion, and they were congratulating him for taking a better job at another company.